Well, the 10th chapter of the Gospel of Mark is a pivotal part in the gospel story. And these September Sundays, I wanted to dive deep into this important chapter of Mark because by chapter 11, Jesus is entering the gates of Jerusalem. And in chapter 10, Jesus is trying to prepare the disciples for what is to come. He is offering final teaching moments and reminding them of his mission and purpose. In fact, just before the passage that I'm about to read, in verse 33, Jesus pretty much tells them exactly what is about to happen. It says, "We are going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes. They will condemn him to death, and then they will hand him over to the Gentiles. They will mock him and spit upon him, flog him and kill him, and after 3 days he will rise again." And yet, immediately after this, Jesus hears from James and John, the brothers, this word that I'm going to read. It's in Mark chapter 10, beginning in verse 35. And I'm going to read 10 verses if you want to follow along with me. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Appoint us to sit, one at your right hand, one at your left, and in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to appoint, but is for those for whom it has been prepared." And when the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. Instead, whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." One of the things I absolutely love about Scripture is just how human the people are in the stories. Think about this. This story is over 2,000 years old, across time and language and culture, and yet when you read these stories about the disciples, you think, maybe we haven't changed all that much in a couple of thousand years. It's just so relatable. Can you imagine Jesus is walking to Jerusalem, where he knows that the seat of Roman power, the heart of the religious elites. He's walking to Jerusalem. He knows what's going to come. He's trying to prepare them for his own suffering and death, and yet they are worried about getting the VIP seats. They want the best seats in the house. Grant us that we can sit on your left and your right, Jesus. I mean, come on, talk about missing the point. You know, I remember in my own ministry, maybe even teachers can relate to this, but the wonderful thing about ministry is that sometimes you just have these amazing moments where you feel like you're getting a front row seat to God at work in people's lives, humbling moments. And then there are other times, well, not so much. You know, years ago, I took a group of youth from my church in East Tennessee to a mission week in Washington, D.C., and we stayed at National City Christian Church, which happens to be not far from the White House. And on this one particular day of our week, we had started our day with a tour of the White House. And we had gotten to go into private rooms, not on the tour in the White House, to meet with someone who grew up in our church, who happened to be on the president's cabinet. And so she met with the kids, took them in these private rooms, and told them about her job, but also told them about her faith and her own journey and growing up in our church. And she talked about hardships she's had in her life, about having an absent father who wasn't around and a mom who died young, and how she'd overcome those things and how her faith had inspired her. And it was just an awesome experience. And I was thrilled for the kids to hear this talk from her. And then we went to DC Central Kitchen, an amazing hunger ministry. They say they're feeding the soul of the city. And they got to help prepare lunch for people all over the city. And they talked to people, leaders and volunteers, who told the kids about how their faith inspires them to be a part of this ministry and to feed hungry people. And then after that, we went to the Washington Mall with all the historic spots, and we walked the Korean War Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial, Lincoln Memorial, Dr. King Memorial. We went through all this history, and we had a picnic on our grounds. And as we were walking back to the church, I was thinking, this is it. Days like this is why I love ministry. And I turned to a kid walking along with me, and I said, London, what's your high of the day? What will you never forget about this day? And he said, not missing a beat, when I fed that squirrel in the park. Humbling, I tell you. Can you imagine Jesus' disappointment? Here he is. He's trying to prepare the disciples for his own suffering and death. He's trying to prepare them, and they are worried about getting the VIP seats. Grant us one sit at your right and one at your left in your glory. They might have said your glory, but they were really thinking of their glory. They wanted the best. They'd given up so much to follow him. They were expecting their big rewards for following Jesus. Give us those VIP seats we've earned. And you can just imagine Jesus shaking his head in disappointment. He's getting ready to suffer and die, and they're worried about power and prestige. So they're jockeying for the best seats, and he takes this moment to turn it into a lesson for us all. Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with? He's, of course, talking about his own suffering and death. And the disciples foolishly say, yes, we can, but they're still not getting it. They are the definition of clueless, which on some level, frankly, gives me some comfort. Because how many times have we missed the point? How many times have we got our own distractions, our own agendas, our own bitterness or resentments that all just serve to distract us from what the real point is of Jesus' message and what he came to do? It comforts me, frankly, to know that even the disciples who were right there watching it and learning about it all, sometimes they just missed the point. They were regularly clueless and often self-serving. They missed the point. Now, if I were Jesus, I would say, hey, I got to find some new disciples here. We got to find some people who measure up. But Jesus never does that. He doesn't give up on them, which gives me comfort to know he must not give up on us either. He doesn't look for new disciples. He tries once again to teach them, even as they are worried about getting the VIP seats. He talks about an opportunity to tell them about what Jesus is here to do. You want to be great? Serve somebody, he says. You want to be great? Serve somebody. And he reminds them, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. The way of Jesus Christ is the way of love, is always a way towards the cross, the way of self-offering and sacrifice. This is the path of Jesus, who said, "Take up your cross and follow me." And the truth is, on one of his very last acts before his arrest in the upper room with his disciples, what did he do? He washed their feet one by one, reminding them with one of his final acts that the Son of Man came to serve as he washes their feet. Like the saying goes, Jesus didn't throw stones, he washed feet. The hard truth of this story, I think, is that even like the disciples, we often want exactly what they wanted. We want power. We like prestige. We want a life that somehow means we get rewarded for all our good deeds. We want to skip the hard parts, like grief and heartache and suffering, all the while saying, "Oh yes, we follow the one who says, 'Take up your cross and follow me.'" We want to pass from all that. You know, when I was in the Holy Land years ago, I'll never forget it. At the very start, in the Old City, when you get to the Via Dolorosa, the historic path that Jesus walked carrying his cross through the city and out to Golgotha, at the very start of the Via Dolorosa, they're probably still there were some guys with crosses that you could rent. You could rent a cross, and that for Christian pilgrims, and they are smaller, lighter, painted nicely so you don't get any splinters, and most importantly, you give it back when you get to the end of the road. And I thought, that's the kind of cross I want. A light one, an easy to carry one, and especially, most importantly, one I don't have to carry for long. Because the disciples, what they didn't realize that day, but they would, shortly they would, that when Jesus was lifted up, it would be on a cross. And by then, all his disciples were gone. Nobody wanted those seats. They were scared, afraid, ashamed, and the only ones on his left and right were criminals. And even then, even from that cross, he loved them. With one final gift of self-offering to the world as he breathed his last, Jesus took that cross, the Roman symbol of power and hate and fear and shame, and he turned it into God's redeeming love to the world. He lived and died arms wide open to the world. And in just a little while, church will be over. I'll offer the final benediction and the blessing, and we'll all be dismissed from this place. And some of us will go home to eat lunch, and some of us will hope to beat the Baptists and the Methodists to one of our fine 39 Mexican restaurants here. But soon you're going to be out of this building, and you will be back to living your life of faith, your journey with Christ. So before Monday gets here, let me just say it. You want to make it a great week? Serve somebody. You want to be great? Serve somebody. Amen.